This story is about a man, George Wright, and the legacy he left to Southern Oregon. George spent his life in the Soda Mountain Wilderness area and wrote about it. Because of him, we can more easily imagine the wildlife and the beauty of the area before it was compromised by cattle ranching and logging. A few years ago, when I was the Southern Oregon Historical Society archivist, we accepted 3 boxes full of George Wright journals. They were a bit dusty and messy. Some of the journals only chronicle purchases and sales of livestock, guns, and horses. Others cover the weather. Honestly, I wasn't excited about them then, but now I am. Wright's journals also document the life of a man who was almost totally self-sufficient, but also sociable. He hunted, fished, and broke horses. He was a cattle rancher. He also valued wildlife, natural habitat, and nature's beauty. We are so fortunate that George Wright was also a writer and captured many of his experiences. Throughout my talk today, I will use Wright's own words, read by my son, Nathan Harper, to convey George's opinions. Let's begin with his description of his boyhood.
I spent many happy days along Dutch Creek when I was a little sprout, and to this day my memories stray back to my boyhood and the happy, carefree days along Dutch Creek, with nothing at all to worry about, especially during the winter time, when our summertime school was closed. It seems that school was the only worry that I had, and the only happy day I spent at school was the last one.
This is the Lowood School that George attended, at least sporadically, for a few years. It was located at the mouth of Camp Creek on land now covered by Iron Gate Lake. In 1907, the first Lowood School burned down. George and the other students were happy when they thought this meant no school, but they were wrong. A tent was soon erected and school continued. George recounted that their lovely new teacher, Louise Freitag, had to begin her career in a tent. This Siskiyou County Office of Education undated photo is probably the school that opened in 1908. The truck beside the building indicates it's definitely not the 1907 school. Although his father wanted him to stay in school, George quit when he was 14, and he never regretted it.
Sometimes my twisted old memory strays away back to my boyhood days along Camp Creek. My father and mother, my brothers and sisters come to me in my memories to be just as they were in the old days at the ranch. I think of my schoolmates and of the neighboring people. I should not have had any worries in those days, since I was getting my food and clothes free, but I did have my problems just the same. One of my biggest problems was figuring out how many days I could stay out of school by playing hooky or by acting sick. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived when I was old enough to leave home and make my own living, and paddle my own canoe. I was 14 years old when the day arrived, and I saddled up my horse and bid farewell to Lowood School, my schoolmates, and yes, the teacher too. It was a happy day.
When George left home after 6th grade, he lived at Cold Spring Flat on land his father owned. George's Uncle John lived there at the time, too. The area is now known as Agate Flat. In 1925, George located his own homestead at Cold Spring Flat, and he remained there for the rest of his life. We found this 1860 photo of Thomas Wright, who was George's father. He died in 1921 when he was 60 and George was about 25. Mary Moore, Thomas's wife and George's mother, lived until 1954. I don't know when yet, but she remarried and moved to Redding. Her name then was Mary Kern. I hope as SOHS continues to transcribe George's writings, we will learn more about his family. So far, I don't know how much contact he had with his siblings, although I do know he is buried next to his younger brother Ernest in the Hornbrook Cemetery. Thomas Wright was buried next to his mother Lydia on Wright family land. Ron Brown and Roger Roberts visited the gravesite, but they had to cross a significant creek and bushwhack through undergrowth to find it. Without Ancestry.com, I would find it hard to keep track of George's various relatives, especially those that share names such as Ida, John, Nellie, and Mary. Fortunately, my sister has helped me with that research, and she's created a family tree for George Wright. George did refer to his uncle, William Wright, frequently, often in references to grizzly bears. One of George's favorite stories, and one that is well known locally, is the story of the grizzly bear called Reelfoot. He was known to be the biggest and possibly the last bear in the region. He killed hundreds of cattle over 20 years or so and evaded capture many times. There was a $2,700 reward for killing Reelfoot at one time. Finally, William Wright and Pearl Bean, along with 2 dogs, successfully found and killed Reelfoot on April 10, 1890. They hauled the bear out over very rough land and had him stuffed. Reelfoot became an attraction, with people paying 10 cents to see him. The first taxidermist who mounted Reelfoot, though, was an amateur, and the stuffed bear began to rot. He was stuffed a second time. In George's opinion, he lost the look of a grizzly bear. William Wright and Bean sold Reelfoot for $500 in 1892 because they no longer wanted to tour with him. The bear was exhibited around the country but eventually disappeared. He might have been last seen in a museum in London in World War II. No one could find him after that. In this photo, George is holding the number 6 Newhouse trap that once caught Reelfoot and caused him to lose 3 toenails. George owned the trap from 1922 until it was stolen from his ranch in 1950. Clearly, George Wright, along with his father and uncles, thrived on an outdoor life that involved horseback riding, living rough, raising cattle, hunting, and fishing. Is it sexist to wonder about the lives of their wives, sisters, mothers, and daughters? George never married. His Uncle William did, though, and he had 6 children. This is a photo of William's wife, Louisa Picard. They married when William was about 36 and Louisa was only 16. They had 1 daughter, Helen, and 5 sons. After 26 years of marriage, Louisa divorced William. She didn't go far away. She married Firm Anderson and lived in Hornbrook. Sadly, Louisa was soon a widow, and her 3rd marriage to Guy Roberts was not a happy one. George's sister Minnie might be another woman who wasn't entirely happy with the ranching lifestyle. In this photo, she is with her first husband, Manuel de Souza, whom she married when she was 19. He was a local boy, and they had 2 children, but the marriage didn't last. Apparently, Minnie was married 4 more times. George frequently mentions his Aunt Ida Frayne and her husband Fred Frayne. Aunt Ida Wright first married Edward Close and had her only child, Lauren Close, when she was 15. She married Fred when she was about 20, and they remained married. I don't know which man in this SOHS photo is Fred, but he's in there. The men are moving logs from Pokegama Log Chute to the Clemathon Mill. Fred's father, Martin, may have been the first Indian trader in the Klamath River area. His wife, Betsy, was an Indian woman half his age. She gave birth to Fred when she was 13 or 14. This photo in the SOHS collection shows Martin Frayne. I think he's probably the man in the white shirt. The record indicates it was taken on 9/23/1900 at a location across from Klamath Hot Springs near a cave. The description of the photo mentions the furs and the Native American artifacts, but it doesn't give any explanation for the 2 skulls near Martin's right hand. Sherry Olson met George Wright in 1961 when he was 65. She and others called him the mayor of Agate Flat. Sherry's husband Clyde shared George's June 4th birthday, so they often spent that day together, eating outside George's agate flat cabin and sharing the chicken, potato salad, chocolate cake with anyone that came along. According to Sherry, George was a tall, thin man with a hawk-like nose and eagle eyes. He was honest, he loved the land and the people who dwelt there. Sherry hoped history would remember George and treasure his legacy. I hope that by creating this presentation, which will be posted on the SOHS website, I'm honoring Sherry's wish and honoring the life of George Wright.